Day one, here we go. It actually is day one of employment, so it's pretty exciting and amazing all that's been accomplished. God put together a team of parents, and they each have a very different skill set. And the amount of things they've done in 2 to 3 months has been absolutely, truly amazing. So Chris and I are actually very humbled to be here and to have this conversation. It's a very important conversation because it has to do with your kids and their future and the legacy that they're going to have. And so we're going to walk through. The structure is about mission and vision, and then we're going to talk with Pastor Phil a little bit because he has a shared vision for Christian schooling as well. And there he is, as well as taking care of chords.
Don't say safe behind you.
That's right.
Where that verse is.
Does everyone have a blue packet? If you do, go ahead and grab that because there's actually a lot of good information in there. We're going to walk through it a little bit. We're going to skip over a lot of it. So it's there for you to read later. But I would like you to have it in front of you as we go through mission and vision. So I'm actually going to do a little collaborative. Pick on a good friend, Jessa. Would you mind reading the mission, actually? She didn't even have her packet. Here we go. All right, awesome.
Colorado Christian Academy provides a forward-pressing, Christ-centered education that prioritizes academic accomplishments and individual development of the whole child while building healthy foundations that change trajectories and result in resilient students who manage the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual successes and challenges of life.
So as we go through, you're going to find that at the core of the school is a real focus on academics, on learning, but at the same time, we are pressing forward on education. So where is education going? So there's a forward movement as well. And then when you look at the whole child, that's the other thing that's been a big part of my history since early 2000 is if we're going to do school, let's think about where kids are going to be at 35 and 40, not just trying to get them into high school and college. And so we'll talk a lot about that. The vision really is for healthy, resilient students. I wanted to walk through a year ago, God really impressed on me healthiness, resilience, really at the end of the day comes when kids begin to know his voice and know his actual person. And it's not just an idea. It's not just somebody who died on the cross 2,000 years ago, but it's actually God himself who through time, right now, is actually with the Holy Spirit living, walking, and wanting to have a relationship. And then really believing that kids know how to do that probably better than we think. We just actually don't invite them into that. So the theme for tonight is, since we're going to start a school from scratch, which is awesome, what are some things we would put in place that would actually be really hard to put in place if you would try to go to a school that's been around for a really long time? And I think one is just to know that we are believing that Jesus is alive, he's moving, and that resilience, when you go through really hard stuff in life that you never thought would happen, it's actually having those conversations with God, getting in just to those places where you let your heart go out to him. And so we've had a lot of, lately, since this got impressed on this with us, with our own kids, is like, why don't you go talk to God about that? Why don't we invite Jesus into these feelings and see what he might want to do or say? And it's really awesome to how he brings friends even into our own kids' lives, or things will come up and they'll actually articulate back to us how he's moving in their life. So, but really want to talk through too, like as parents, what we're dealing with in today's society. I'm going to just go through these pretty quickly, but it's on the rise how many kids are dealing with anxiety and depression. And I think some of us think it would never happen to our own kids. And then you look at other people around us, and you're like, well, why is it going on in their home? And we really aren't, no one's immune to it, or it won't happen. It could happen to any of us. Our kids will go through stuff. And so these are some things they're dealing with right now. You think about even like when we talk about being a school that focuses on identity, the amount of messages that are coming to them nowadays as far as who they are. When you think about even going through town, how we define ourselves a lot of times is what we have. And kids like compare themselves to other people and they find if they're okay based on what they have. The other one is what I do. So as a kid, in society, I become okay if I can perform better than somebody else, then I'm going to be okay. And the last one is what people say about us. I took these from a guy named Henry Now, and he's been pretty influential in my life, but he talks a lot about spiritual identity. And to be really at a place where we can say, I'm okay with me, there's just work that gets to be done around being a child of God, being His beloved. And so this school really is about, from kindergarten on, just by who we hire, who we put in front of kids, that they have this message of you're unconditionally loved. And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to perform. We are going to have high expectations. We're going to have a lot of support to get there. But your person is okay. Your identity is already set. And so in many ways, we're going against some cultural messages that our kids get every day. And that's, you're only going to be okay if you're better than other people, if you got better stuff, or if you're the most popular. And then that creates a lot of anxiety, which we talked about as far as who they are. So we realize and we empathize that it's not easy raising kids today in South Denver. The other thing we're noticing is kids are actually pretty bored at school. Like if you were in my shoes and walked around a school all day and you peek in classrooms, like they're sitting in chairs for 6 hours a day, 5 hours a day. It's a long day to be in school. And then the other thing is there's a lot of transactional work still. So you'd think in year 2020, it wouldn't be so much worksheets and just reading and answering things, but really the classroom hasn't evolved as much as maybe we thought it would. And so in many cases we find kids that are just not wanting to be at school. And the other one is, I don't know if you have a 4-year-old, but they kind of look like that going into class. And then your 8th grader, school along the way just kind of takes the joy out of learning, takes the joy out of showing up every day and seeing your teacher. And so we got to ask, well, why is that? What's going on with the development of kids? What's going on with schooling? We really want to tackle that question. So it is a partnership with CCA and parents. And we would love to help you build foundations that lead to thriving legacy for your student and consequently for your family. And everything we do is really about helping them grow and gain confidence in who they are so they can thrive when they get into those older years in college and in high school. So, and I would do that backwards, but high school and college. So we understand that it's challenging raising children in our fast-paced, specialized, sexualized, technological society. We believe that no student should experience anxiety, depression, or sadness while at school or because of school. You'll find that, yes, it will happen, but we believe it shouldn't happen. And so we're going to intervene, we're going to jump in, we're going to take it seriously to really change trajectories or really solve problems when they begin to happen at school. We don't think that students should have to deal with worry or pressure associated with not being prepared for the next level in school. So as you get to know me, and we talk tonight, math, reading, writing, communication, critical thinking, I really believe every kid should be at or above grade level, even a kid who might struggle. So we have you'll hear about all of our kids at some point. And but Sadie's dyslexic, she has ADD, and all of those come hard. But with the right intervention and the right focus, she still is going to be above grade level by the time she gets to 8th grade. It's just a different path. We have to work differently. We have to know her and work with her a little bit differently. So if you look back at this sheet, we are focused on inspiring students, that when they come to school, there's a sense of wonder and awe that they're not going to lose. We are big on achievement and academics and what they learn. And then we've already talked a little bit about the thriving as something that they're going to be doing for the rest of their life. They're getting the foundation in school. The commitment we have is that I believe through a true knowledge of God, like who He is, that then begins to shape how I view myself. And then that actually allows me to love other people genuinely. And so this holistic education, so I've worked with, I started a school called Pathway School for intelligent kids to learn differently. And they all came with beat down spirits generally about school and life. And we found that as they began to understand who they are, and they weren't trying to always be one up on somebody else, but they were just cool with their weaknesses, they actually were able to love each other and support each other in a way where the environment totally changed. And now they're all in their 30s, believe it or not, and or late 20s, early 30s, and to see them thriving, because they weren't great at academics at first, but they started to get to a place where they were great at academics because they were okay to risk and try, because they were okay with who they were. And so this identity piece, this holistic piece, becomes to me the X factor in the long-term thriving. I'll let you go ahead and read why we exist, but this was a central question that parents were asking themselves, like, do we need to start a Christian school in Denver? And so the answer to that question is in these bullet points. And then again, the foundational scriptures, I would encourage you just to take a morning and read through those. Let's go ahead and talk through, if we have a vision that we'll have students that are healthy, resilient for life in the long run, how do we get there? What does that look like? So if we were to see a kid, a graduate, we believe they're capable of more than they thought possible. We don't want them just to check out or be done. We want to have teachers that can move them past where they thought they could go. We want to maintain curiosity for learning. And the joy for life is seen in their eyes. So I talk a lot about bright eyes or shiny eyes. It's to me a metric when I go in a classroom that I look for. And then they live life like it matters. Like their person actually matters. When they show up in a room, they matter. Achieve, confidently master learning targets in math, reading, communication, writing, and critical thinking. They possess a mindset of growth that celebrates the process of learning, leading to high quality outcomes and products. They distinctively separate themselves as leaders, both academically and personally. And then thrive, we already talked about the first one there. The second one, demonstrate the importance of well-being as seen in their exercise, diet, sleep, gratefulness, peace, and self-reflection. And that they know the love of God as seen as a person of Jesus, experiencing the power of the Holy Spirit. Before I pass it on to Phil, I've kind of gone through the vision pretty quickly because some of you have heard me talk too many times about kind of vision, and you're really curious, can we actually pull off the practicals of this school? And so I want to spend a lot of my time on the strategy. How do we actually pull off a vision like this? So we'll talk about that after Phil comes up and talks about our partnership. So come on, Phil.
So, that's really pretty out there. I love that. About 70 years ago, I feel like the world was asking a question. And the question was, what do I have to do to be saved? And I think that because of that question, you saw crusades such as Billy Graham's or others that were incredibly successful. As I look at the people in my street, interact with the people in my church, I've realized that the question is shifted. We're not asking ourselves, what do I have to do to be saved? We're asking the question, what do I have to do to save my family? We see the way the world's going. We see maybe legislation that's being passed. We see the types of challenges that our children have to deal with from peers, from teachers. And we ask, what is the world going to be like? And how are my kids going to be able to make it in that world? And so as a church, we've set out to be an answer to that question. To be an answer to the question of how do we save the family? And that's why our mission here at Valley View Christian Church is to help families. So that's important. We want to help families to follow Jesus. Because we believe that ultimately He is the greatest solution of all. And part of helping families follow Jesus, we feel like has something to do with what we're starting here. And that's a school. That if we're going to really truly minister to the entire family, then we have to be willing to come alongside these children, not just when they are here on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday evening, or perhaps for some other church activity, but we have to be willing to come alongside them really where they spend the majority of their time, more time than even you as a parent get to spend with your child. And that's where a school fits. It was on our radar. It was something that we had considered, but it was also something that we knew we couldn't do until you reached out to us, until you showed up here tonight. What we are doing and what we are starting is so important. This county is incredibly influential. And I don't know if you've realized how influential it is, but it is. I was struck by the fact, we've only lived here about 3 years, I was struck by the fact that it was just under 3 years ago, a deputy lost his life here in Denver. And President Trump took to Twitter, as he always does. But he took to Twitter and he said, "My condolences to the people in," I would have thought he would have said Denver, perhaps even Highlands Ranch. But he said Douglas County. Why? Well, certainly there's some political savviness in that, but more than that, there is influence in this county. And for those of you that live in this county or certainly in this area, you have influence. And your children are going to have influence. And the point that's being made is, as the family goes, this county's going to go. And as this county goes, the state follows. And if we really want to make an impact on the trajectory or the future of our country, it starts with things like this. And this is something to be a part of. Anybody in here good at yo-yos? Y'all good at yo-yo? Anybody, for real? Anybody can walk a dog? Can you walk a dog? No? Well, I'm terrible at yo-yos. Awful. See, like that's what I get every time. Every time. It just stops. And this is what I feel like with my kids I have to experience on nearly a daily basis. I got them tight. I got them wound up tight. Or when I say every time I say I, when in regard to my kids, I really mean her, my wife. So just to clarify, she has them in line. She has them tight, exactly the way they're supposed to be. And then they go to school. And they interact with friends, and they interact with teachers, and then they begin to get unwound. And then they come home, and then we have to wind them back up again, get them back in line, get them back on track, because they're wanting to know what's going on. Why are they saying these things? Why are they believing these things? Why is it that I have a teacher who doesn't believe in Jesus, who doesn't attend church? That's hard for a 6-year-old to process. I mean, my 17, well, we don't have a 17, but when they get to 17, 18, 19, that's a different story. They need to be able to work through that. But now I've got a 6-year-old who's looking to this person for influence, direction, and they don't believe in Jesus. They don't attend church. They don't even align with her basic values. And she's wanting to know why. I talk to one of my daughters, and I'll say, "How are your friends not friends doing?" Because that's really kind of what they are. They're your friends, but they're not really your friends. They say they're your friends, but then whenever the way they treat you and the way they talk about you and the way they kind of play the games that they play, they're a product of their environment. Their parents aren't in a church, and they certainly aren't trying to follow Jesus. It's how your friends not friends doing. Or trying to explain to one of my kids, "Yeah, I know there's this kid down the road, and he wants to be a she. There's this identity issue that's going on. What do you do with that?" I mean, those are tough things to process for a 6, 7, 8-year-old child. And as I'm trying to wind the yo-yo back up, what happens? You end up with knots, right? And so they're redefining for me and for my wife, my kid's mother, they're redefining friendship. Because these friends, not friends, that isn't a thing. That shouldn't be a thing. Those aren't your friends. And so we try to get them away, but that's a big fight. And then they redefine how finances get managed. We can work through some of that. And then it comes to family. They start redefining your family for you. Then they start redefining, and this is where it gets unconscionable, faith. And now I'm trying to wind back up a yo-yo that's full of knots, and it's tough to wind back up a kid that's got knots in their lives. It's really tough to do that. And so when I hear of an opportunity like this, I see something special. My 4-year-old daughter, at dinner, I'm asking her, I say, "Honey, I'm saying, let's all pray." And I say, and then she jumps in and she says, "Well, I want to pray." Well, I've heard her prayers. Her prayers, she's praying about a blanket, about her dog, about hugs and things like that. And they aren't the best prayers. But a couple of weeks ago, she says, "I want to pray." And she says this prayer. It's unbelievable. She says, "God, thank you for Mommy. Thank you for the meal that Mommy has made. Thank you for Daddy. Thank you for Isaiah. Thank you for Virginia. Thank you for Madison. Thank you for Kobe, our dog. Thank you for all that you have provided for us. We're so grateful for it. Thank you for Jesus. Amen. Who are you? Where did this come from? And then I pick her up at her preschool, St. Luke's, just a few weeks ago. And there in her class, oh man, her teacher's up front, Miss Sandy, 70-something-year-old Miss Sandy. And she says, all right, it's time to pray before your mommy and daddy pick you up, right? Let's pray. Thank God for your mommy. Thank God for your daddy. Thank you, God, for all the good things that you've given us. That's something I don't have to unwind. That's something that I don't have to wind back up, I should say, or untie a knot. That's the kind of stuff that we want all of our kids to have. And that's not what you're going to get in a public school. As far as I know, you're not going to get that in a charter school either. That's a kid whose life is being changed by a Christian woman who just loves Jesus and loves her. She probably doesn't need the money anymore. She's just doing it because that's what she's called to do. And the Holy Spirit's just speaking through her as she's pouring into my kids. Let me tell you what I don't need. I don't need teachers that are going to point my kids to the world. I need them to point my kids towards the Word. I don't need them when they're having problems to point them towards the government. I need them to point them towards God. When my child is having an identity issue, I don't need a teacher who's going to say, be whoever you want. He, she, go with what you feel. I don't need that. What I need is someone who is going to look at my kid and say, you are beautifully and wonderfully made in the image of God. And in the beginning, He made them male and He made them female. And as you pursue Him and follow Him, you will find your identity in Him. That's what I need. I think that's what you need. I know there's been a lot of conversations, and I know there's a lot of considerations when it comes to something like this. I'll tell you something. I've met a lot of people who wish they could pay for their kids to go to a Christian school. I've never met one who regretted paying for their kid to go to a Christian school. And I'm talking hundreds of people. I've never met one. I'll tell you something else. I've talked to, prayed with, met with, had my heart broken with parents who wish they could go back and do things a little differently, who would do anything to write a check for 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it would be to get their kid to believe in Jesus. Because now they're in their 20s and they're in their 30s and they're looking back and they see when they got off track. And they would do anything. They would pay any amount of money because in the grand scheme of it, 50 grand isn't going to make all that much difference or whatever that amount would be for you. But if they would have believed in Jesus, then they wouldn't be dealing with the problems that they're dealing with. They might have married better. They probably would have handled their money better. They certainly would have managed their family better. They would write that check in a second. And not just to get a child, if they could go back to get them to believe in Jesus, but then to even just get them to have a vibrant faith. I talked to a lot of people whose kids, they would say they believe in Jesus. Sure, they'll probably make it to heaven. But man, there's a lot of life, that full life that Jesus talks about, that they're missing out on. And they wish they could write a check, but they can't. And I would just say that if you're somebody who is maybe hung up a little bit on the money, man, go for it. Jump in. Because there'll come a day which you wish you would have written that check. There'll come a day in which you wish that you would have put your kid in that school. Now what's going to happen here? Man, you're going to get teachers that are going to love your kids, and their desire is that those kids are going to follow Jesus, believe in Jesus, and become the person that God created them to be. And we, as a church, are coming alongside this school to do everything that we can to help make this school successful. We want to, within reason, provide everything the school needs to be successful. We also, with that success, believe that it's important for the school to be a separate entity. We want this school to have the appropriate ownership of what they are doing with governance, with financing, all the things along those lines. We aren't stipulating curriculum. We aren't stipulating tuition. Instead, we're coming alongside you to make this thing successful and to resource you and to lift you up to where your kids can follow Jesus. And our hope is that in doing this, we can help your family to follow Jesus. And we believe that Matt and the team here can make that to happen. And we're excited that you're here with us. We're excited that you value Christian education. And I guess above all else, we're excited that you want your family to follow Jesus. And so with that, I want to hand it off to Matt and allow him to share how this curriculum is going to do just that, to lift up your kid.
Thanks, Bill. Got goosebumps just talking about how excited he is to partner with us, and I think that was a prayer we all had in finding a location is the most important thing, is the alignment of mission. So thanks for believing in us and opening up your doors and hosting us here. We're extremely grateful. Thank you. So I did spend a little more time just to be able to look at how are you going to pull this off, as far as getting the school ready for September 2020. How can you pull off a vision when you're talking about legacy of my kid? And that sounds very, very big. So let's go through it, and then we're going to have some time for questions at the end too, so write those down. We want to hear every question today. But we are a school on the move, and you're going to find out that's not just on the move in the sense of how quickly we're getting a school started. We really believe we want to be on the move and getting our kids up and out of their seats and being active and being healthy kids. But as far as our strategy goes, we want to be really clear on who we are and who we're not. We want to bring value. We want to hire the best employees. We're going to focus on students' growth by delivering excellent instruction and programming. And then we want to be resourced. So as far as a strategy towards success, here's who we are. Here's the value we're going to bring, and here's the resources we're going to bring to pull all that off. So I know it's hard to see, but I'm just going to read through this as far as who we are and who we're not, and then ask any questions you have at the end. But who we are, decidedly Christian, with the ultimate outcome that students would decide to submit their lives to their Heavenly Father, as seen demonstrated in baptism and the bearing of good fruit that comes from an abiding relationship with Him. What we're not is a school that sprinkles Christian phrases or nice people on top of an already secular curriculum and culture. We're going to work hard to have a customized curriculum that we generally write, and because we believe that's an important thing as opposed to just buying a box curriculum from a secular company and then putting a Christian teacher on top. We're partnering with mission-aligned families, but we're not a covenant school. So what that means is we will accept families that really sit down with us, and our admissions process is going to be thorough, but families that say, we know you want my kid to be baptized, we know you want my kid to know Jesus, and we're okay with that. And we're okay with coming along this community and being part of this community, but it doesn't mean they have to get a letter from a pastor or write something. I've been a part of Christian schools now since I was super young, and I've just seen so many of those letters and things just written just to get into the school. I want to have an authentic relationship with every single person that comes in, that I can just look them in the eye and say, just tell me where you're at. Tell me where you want to be, and tell me how we can help you to get there. We're a high-value school, but we don't want to be elitist. We're student-centered. We're not classroom-centered, teacher-centered, parent-centered. All those things are important. But when it comes to making decisions, every single decision comes down to what's most important for the student. We're committed to individual mastery of academic fundamentals. What I mean by that is fundamentals are those things I talked about already. Fundamentals are the essentials of learning. I want every single kid to master them. So what we're not going to do is leave gaps in kids' learning in math, in reading, in writing, communication, or critical thinking. We are classically focused in the humanities, because I believe every Christian school should be classically focused. We're rooted in traditions, we're rooted in stories of the past. Every single story our kids read has the potential to change their lives. So we want to be really careful about what we put in front of them. But we're not a classical school. And I can talk more about the difference between those two later on if you have questions. What we're using the phrase deep learning, but what I really mean by that is we care about learning. First and foremost, I want kids to learn. I don't want them just to do transactional work. So we're attentive to data, and we analyze our instructional practices. Are the things we're doing actually showing in the data that kids are learning, the formative assessments and different assessments that we do? So we're not solely like a private, some people say we're a problem-based school, we're one-to-one device, or we're a classical, progressive, traditional, we're a philosophy school. We're not any of those. We're really put all of our energy around our kids learning. And then customized curriculum to ensure alignment to our school's commitments and standards. This is what I've been about my whole life, is that when I hire teachers, that they bring also the desire to write curriculum or to find the best curriculum out there. So we're not a neighborhood school that follows state, national standards and then layers Christian teachers on top. I heard that before somewhere. We're holistically focused as seen in our effort to foster an environment that builds healthy bodies, minds, and spirits. So when we talk about who we are, it really is body, mind, and spirit. It's not just academics or just an athletic school or something like that. So part of our strategy is to bring value. And I'll start with actually the student. So to know every single student, who they are, where they're at academically, we're gonna do, I'll get on the next slide, I'll talk about this too, but every time a kid comes to our school, we're gonna do 3 to 5 hours of testing. So I wanna know where all their gaps are, where they're strong, where things come super easy. And then we're gonna look at testing kids too every 2nd grade, 4th grade, and 7th grade year. Because if I'm behind in something or I'm ahead, it generally takes a year and a half, year, to put a plan together and begin to see some movement in a certain area. So there's extensive testing happening in those years. But one thing I just believe in is just to keep track. Don't lose track of where kids are at. The other thing is, what does mom and dad want to see out of their kids? What's the partnership with them? Where are their natural strengths and how can we maximize those? And then I'm huge on it's okay to have weaknesses. Jesus says that he's going to use those weaknesses so he can be strong. And so we can take the mask off and we don't have to put false selves on. Every time we put a false self on, that's where we find ourselves not being healthy at 20 and 30. Instruction and programming. So valuable classes, curriculum, schedule, co-curriculars, excursions, technology, homework, health and wellness. We'll talk about those in a second. And then it really comes down to who we hire in the classroom. That's the experience. You can't mess up that hire when there's only one teacher for that grade, right? And so every single hire becomes extremely important. And we're going to work extremely hard on getting skilled, passionate people who I believe are transformed people. They teach redemptively because they've been redeemed. They have a different way of getting down and seeing kids because they've gone through life in such a way where they're really called to love kids in a way that those kids begin to see God. I put in the middle worship, and I do believe school is a place of worship, that worship is us living every day, like we just are worshiping with our being. And so my best effort can be because I'm alive. I've got a brain, I've got a body, I've got hands and feet. It's not my best effort to necessarily prove that I'm okay, or I'm worthwhile. So we'll talk a lot about what it means to worship God with our brain, with our body. So we already mentioned faculty and staff. The question I get is, are you going to be able to find faculty and staff by September? And I think it's the #1 question to ask. And so we're putting a lot of attention and energy to that. And applications open today. So if you know someone, we've already got one applicant in. But we do have a lot of interest already from just people that are in the community, whether that be principals, business managers, or teachers. But this is the type of person we're looking for. So we want to bring value. We talk a lot about kids are crafted. Like God's best thing that he ever made was us, and we're kids too. And he prepared them for something. And so whoever we hire is bringing that out of kids, is speaking life into them. So I get quite a bit of questions too, like about testing. What are we going to use for testing? So whatever the language curriculum is that we end up using, they have testing materials that we'll use to guide that part of the conversation. With math, we're leaning towards Singapore math, and so they have a set of assessments that we can use. And then outside of that, we'll use the Woodcock-Johnson test to look at achievement and some cognitive skills. And then based on that, we'll be able to see where kids are at in their fluency, their reading comprehension, whether it's oral or written that they do better or worse at. We can really get a good profile on their skill set and then sit down with mom and dad and say, all right, here's where we're at. Does this match what you've seen over the last several years and where we'd like to go in the next year and a half or 2 years? A lot of us feel like we have just a lot of work to do academically with our kids, and so this is going to be a big focus for us, is the testing. I don't define kids by their testing, though. It's just a window. Like, it's a window into a conversation. It's a window into learning more about them. So curriculum, I'll go ahead and pull out your sheet again. There's a frequently asked questions. Don't get stuck on tuition yet. We'll get to that in a minute. But go to the last page, actually. Second to last page. So what curriculum are you using is the question. And then the other packet, to make it really challenging, there's academic distinctives. And I'm going to point to that as well as we talk through curriculum. So when we talk about reading and spelling, I'm a believer in a phonemic awareness approach. And so that kids would learn why they're spelling things a certain way so they can actually decode a nonsense word based on the rules that they've learned around spelling. And then at some level, there's readers that go along with it that are at the same level as far as their spelling and their fluency for that period. So they have leveled readers, they're getting spelling rules, spelling words, they're all packaged together. There's a lot of programs out there that do this. They're generally an Orton Gillingham type program. So I'm going to wait until we hire before I commit to one of them, because they're all generally pretty similar. But that's what we're going to be going towards as far as the reading, spelling. The literature, though, like as a reader, you can actually be reading much higher than your spelling. You can begin to decode words and figure things out, or you can hear it audibly from a teacher. And so we want to push kids' ability to think critically around literature. So that's going to be more of a direct instruction. I think stories have the power to change lives. And so I don't just want to put a reader in front, like a leveled reader in front of kids, and that's all the reading they do. I want to pick something very life-changing to put in front of them as well. So that's literature. And we'll pick those as a group together when we come together to figure out what our literature scope and sequence is. Math, Singapore mathematics, or something similar. But Saxon math is more of, there's two common maths in town, right? So Saxon math or Singapore math, and there's some others that are similar to both. But for me, it's, when we think about math, I really want my kids to be able to understand number sense and to be able to move things around in their head and to be able to conceptually get math. Not just over time, know 8 plus 7 is 15 because they've done it 50 times, right? And so that's where this program does go deeper. Parents get a little more frustrated with it at times because it pushes us into a new space in math. But I found it just, when you get into middle school then, kids can actually do the percents and the fractions and the decimals at a much higher level with this type of math than just doing the drill and kill work. Also, when you saw that slide about numbing, I've seen a lot of kids by 3rd or 4th grade in Saxon math just be done with math. In fact, I have a kid who's in 2nd grade who's done with math, and she's brilliant at it because she's done so many worksheets. So we're moving towards Saxon math, or Singapore math for that reason. And then Bible, Story of God. It's put together by a Story Formed company. But it's pretty amazing. You can do it with adults. You can do it with kindergartners. And it starts out with there's the first character in the Bible is God. He's good, and he's right, and he's perfect. Because he's holy, he has to deal with evil. And when he deals with evil, thank God he does, right? Because you imagine a God who didn't deal with evil. Our kids hate us when we don't deal with the only evil in our home. But as you go through the story, you begin to see God's dealing with evil, and then he's always following it up with mercy. Story after story after story. And kids begin to hear these stories, they say them back, and they become part of who they are. So we're going to use that for all the kids in year one, because they haven't done it yet. And then turn the page. So we're looking right now for a good narrative history as well. For upper school, there's a story of us that's pretty good. But I've always had a dream of writing my own history curriculum for young kids, because I was a history major. But in theory, what we're looking for is I want kids to be able to say, all right, early man happened during these years. Then we have Greeks and Romans, 500 BC to 500 AD. Here's some major ideas, major people. But what we're going to do is build the umbrella at a pretty high level without getting into all the weeds. And then as we get older, we start to put in different books, or we put in different history stories, and the schema begins to develop. I don't know about you, but I had no idea what was going on in China versus Europe. I was growing up as a kid. History was just very at the moment. Like, what are we learning right now? And I couldn't connect it all together. So for a ninth grader, when they came in and they had a good sense of the timeline and the chronology of history, and then the major themes of history, that's how we'll structure our history program. And then science is a combination of science lab and science story too. I don't know if you guys have ever thought of science as a story, but it is as well. Like, if you think the progression of people trying to figure out God, that's science. And so how did they do that over history? So science and history become a lot more connected than we actually think. And we're going to try to bring those together as well. The other paper has this personalized learning versus direct instruction. It's the bottom of the page. It says cultural distinctives. It's underneath the academic distinctive section. I want to talk about that for a second. So in math, in reading, in writing, in spelling, we will really figure out where kids are at and put them into smaller groups. So when you see the schedule in the morning, we're going to bring in paraeducators to make the groups smaller, so we can move kids as fast as we can in math and reading and spelling, or as slow as we must. So I don't want the gaps to happen, and that's just, it's fundamental. We can't miss it, we can't skip it. And so that's where things get personalized at Colorado Christian Academy. So that's the morning. Where it's more direct instruction is the humanities. So as I'm teaching literature, as I'm teaching history or science, we'll pull back into a bigger group. You'll get all your 3rd and 4th graders together, and you'll do direct instruction as a teacher. But you might have a 3rd grader with a 1st grader in math. You might have a 2nd grader with a 4th grader. Whoa, doesn't that create some problems or whatever? And that actually speaks to the very heart of who we are, actually, because, again, our identity is not set on comparing myself one to the other. And will we have issues? Yeah. Will your kid talk about it at home? Yes, but that's what this age is for, is to walk them through those things, to begin to teach them that it's okay to struggle in reading. It's okay to struggle in math. We still love you. You're amazing. You know, you have all these other strengths, and you get them to articulate who they are in the midst of actually the struggle. That's why education is so cool. I love it. It's like this opportunity to build real life into kids at a young age. So if you look at the instructions, there's 4 different things we're hoping the kids to be able to do around 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, that period. I want kids to stand and deliver for about 15 minutes the story of God. So based on them hearing it, and they've learned it, they're actually going to be able to stand and talk through the whole narrative of Scripture as a story. The other one is the story of the world. That's that history. So stand and be able to talk through that high-level umbrella of timeline. Here's the story of the world. The third one is the story of me. What family did I come from? What am I about? I did struggle with reading back in 2nd grade, and here's what I did to overcome it. I did have relational problems with my mom, dad, friend, whatever. But it's a story about me and how I'm beginning to develop through adversity, through successes. And so I really like that one. And then the last one's the story of my work. So I've done a lot of work in the last year, 2 years, 3 years. the vision I've had here for like 6 years, and I can't wait to get going on it now, is where school shuts down for a day, 2 days, but you invite grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, friend, and the kids design a brochure for the semester. They're the ones getting ready to put it on. But it's a TED Talk-like conference where we celebrate their work. And we find, and studies show, that when you highlight work, it's more effective than grades because they really know that it's being spotlighted, people are going to come. And it's a phrase that quite a few people are using now. It's called real work for real people. So we're finding real work that real people get to look at and give a lot of celebration to. And so that's this one. It's the story of my work. And I can't wait to get going with that because we can bring in different businesses too and really shut the place down and celebrate art and music and all those types of things. So write your questions down. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of them coming up, but let me speak about co-curriculars. So the morning's the cores and the afternoon's co-curriculars. So Monday, Wednesday, and we're believing that God's gonna be able to bring all these together as far as the health and wellness, which would be like your PE / teaching kids about their brain and teaching them about health and wellness. Art, music, and Spanish. Tuesday, Thursday, health and wellness again, with science lab, leadership and innovation, and storytelling. Now these may change a little bit based on a kindergartner versus a 4th or 5th grade, but this is the general structure of what we're looking at for co-curriculars. I'm going to jump ahead, actually. And then Fridays, we're going to do excursions. And this really speaks to the philosophy that we have about learning, that learning happens best when I can get connected to it. So emotionally connected, or my body's moving in some way and I'm connected. But when we're out and about experiencing learning and connecting it back to the classroom, it goes much deeper than if we're just talking about it in the classroom. So we have a group of people, and we're looking for more people to really put together these trips on Fridays. Some of them will be out in the community, others we'll bring in here. There's a lot of companies too that'll bring in a great experience into the school. But the whole idea is to get them learning at a deeper level. So wanted to touch on that. I'm gonna pause here because I'm gonna bring up Matt Holst. How do we do all this? I know it's a question. How do you get all this done? And one of the ways we're gonna do it is we're gonna partner with Thrive Educational Services. So Matt and I started working together, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago now. 9 years ago. And so I started a tutoring company called Compass Educational Services, and Matt ran it for me for a long time, and we worked together. And we have just basically gone into families and said, what's going on with your students? We put together plans, and Matt's going to talk a little bit about his philosophy with working with kids, but also he's going to plug in holes. Like if we need a paraeducator in the morning, he's got about 15 tutors he's trained. And when you hear about how he works with kids and trains teachers, you're going to be delighted, or it could be something in the afternoon. But let me introduce you to Matt Holst.
Well, thank you, Cart. Yeah, I've worked with Matt for 9 years. Like, he was a boss, a mentor, friend, and now almost we're like co-conspirators with seeing kingdom mischief happen with young little tykes. So, but Matt, I'd follow him anywhere. So if you guys don't know Matt that well, like I'd probably follow him. I'd follow him to North Yemen if he led me there. Like he's worth following. He's inspiring. He actually brings out the best in so many people, and actually has transformed me into who I am. But I think we have so much similar vision. So I just want to paint a little bit about our heart for your kids. And I don't know how old your kids are, but I think the biggest thing we come in and what we bring with kids with Thrive Tutoring is that we just love them. Like we believe in them. We look in their eyes and like we see them for who God made them to be. And I think everybody, God made us all with stories, right? We all have a story, and that includes good and bads. And I think God made even from the littlest kids to be confident in our stories. So I think from the foundation of learning is we want to develop confidence in our kids. And when I'm saying this, I think of my kids. I have 2 little kids with 1 on the way, and I love them to death, and I just long for them to actually build confidence. And with that, that has to be awareness, like of their whole story. sometimes like our culture, even to our ages, right? We actually hide part of our stories, the negative pieces. Culture has taught us to like, no, let's hide those pieces. And I think with, whoa, watch the cord. They got me on a cord here. I think with what God made us, He made our whole story negatives and positives. And we want students to be able, from a young age, to look at their whole story and be able to smile and say, the goods and bads is what made me special. And we want to give students from a young age tools to be able to flourish within who they are. And I think it all sounds good, but I mean, this is what gets me out of bed at night. I mean, one story, my favorite, and it's of a student named Ian Welker. He's now a sophomore at Mullen High School, but I started working with him when he was like just a tiny kid. And this is his story, literally my first day working with Ian. I go into a library and I'm supposed to teach him how to like be organized and like do homework. He climbs on top of this bookcase, takes this little agenda I just gave him to teach him to use, ripped it up and started chucking it at me. And I'm like, oh my goodness. But at that moment, this is what we're supposed to do as parents and educators. We're supposed to look at them and say, Lord, show me a picture of who they're meant to be when they're 30. So I start teaching them and interacting with them as they're meant to be, not how they're meant acting in the moment, right? So we start investing in them, and I start looking at Ian and say, Ian, I believe in you. And there's something in teachers and tutors that we're like this piece of this non-anxious presence that we go in with belief and a patience that we say, one day, I know who you're going to be. Maybe you don't, Ian, but I know who you're going to be. Like 6 years later, Ian is now, he just finished his second trimester at Mullen, and he got all A's and B's, and he was a little kid whose mom was sitting with me at Starbucks crying because he was depressed and broken, and right, we believe in this kid. And I think part of God's heart is like, we are meant to actually see our students and believe in them. And I think part of Matt and I's philosophy is very similar. Like our kids, even from 2nd grade to 8th grade, we're not just brains on sticks, right? Like sometimes we treat education like we're just like brains on sticks and we insert the facts. But we're people who have hearts and we have hands. And yeah, we do have brains. But I think part of our heart as we engage kids is like we actually start with the heart, the identity piece. If they know who they are, who God made them to be, and if they can celebrate that, like their identity starts to fill up. And when that happens, they start believing they can take risk again. And actually when risk happens is when we start learning, right? Because that's when we fail, but we're like, whoa, I think I can get back up. And that's what we want to look at kids and say, go fail, that's okay. But we're going to empower you to fight after you fail, right? And that's a gritty thing that many of us actually are still learning, right? But if we teach kids that young to be gritty and learn how to fight after they fail, it's a powerful thing, and that's an identity piece, right? And then we as educators are meant to give them methods and tools to flourish within their own story, the hands piece. And then from there, we believe actually the head will follow. This is the vehicle, and actually your head will engage learning, and they will come out actually very, very educated people. And we'll give them strengths with that. And I think my heart is, more than anything, is just to assist in the school. If we can assist your kids into the people they're meant to be when they're 30 and 40 years old, and we have vision for that, like, I'd love to be part of it. My other student, this guy named Will Laws, he's now finishing his junior year at Regis High School. And again, I started with him when I was your kid's age. And he was a kid, his parents sat down and said, he's stuck. And I'm like, I don't know what stuck means. And we sit down and I'm like, yep, he's just stuck. And we did assessment with them, but not just assessment where we like, let's give you a little test and spit out the details. Like, that is important, and we will do that with some of the tests in here. But there's a more holistic picture of his story. We got to see what's going on with your life that you're not motivated and leaning in and hungry to actually start stepping forward in responsibility, right? And over this year, he's finished his junior year now with all A's and B's, playing hockey, motivated for life. but it was a long process. And what we view is this, you guys, most of you know it, I'm assuming, is the prodigal son story. You guys, I'm sure you know the story in the Bible. But this is really, I think our philosophy is like, but we like to call it the patient father story. Because there was a father who saw their sons or their kids run off, right? And he just sat on his porch, patient, but with belief. It's like a father who never stopped believing in his kids. There was like just a consistent belief, but also a consistent patience that believed that their son's going to come back and he's going to flourish again. And I think as educators, that's our posture. We're leaning in, just believing. We're waiting. Maybe it's 6 years, but you are going to flourish in this God-given story that you have. And it's special. So we just want to celebrate kids more than anything else. I just want to fist pump kids. Just like, you can do it, you know? And when they get that, when someone believes in them, like there's a change that happens. And I think of, my oldest is 5. She just turned 5 on Valentine's Day. She loves Frozen 2. That's like her big passion right now. But I just look at her when I'm choosing a school. She's going to kindergarten next year. And I'm just like, I just look at her and I'm like, I don't want to make choices as a parent just on like comfort for next year, but I want to see her as a world changer that she's meant to be. Like she's going to be effective at the age of 30, affecting the world, and I want to parent her in that way. I want to teach her in that way. So I guess more than anything, as we come alongside your kids, like I promise you, we're going to love and believe on your kids. And this is another commitment I train all my tutors and teachers in. And actually, it might be a challenge for us. One of my mentors, his name's John Peterson. And he had a son. John Peterson is now in his like 70s. He lives here in Castle Rock. But he had a son who actually didn't do so well in high school. And he drove off the deep end with drugs. And he told me the story one time. His son went and crashed his car. And he came to like, Dad, I just crashed your car. And John started just smiling at him. And I go, and John goes, well, what I did was, before that, I started praying, Lord, give me a picture of who my son is meant to be. Not how he is right now, but who he is meant to be. And Lord, give me courage and patience to treat him how you see him, not just how he is in the moment. So his son comes to him and says, John, Dad, I just crashed the car. John's smiling at him. He's like, well, aren't you mad at me? He goes, oh yeah, I'm furious. And he's still smiling. He's like, I'm furious. He goes, well, why are you smiling? Because he goes, that actually isn't who you are. That's not who you are. I know who you are. And he got to rattle off, in prayer, this is who you are. And rattle off the man of God who he's meant to be. And he goes, well, am I not in trouble? Oh yeah, you're grounded. Still smiling at him, right? So yeah, he's not erasing discipline, but he saw a vision of his son beyond the current moment. And as parents and educators, that's what we're praying for each one of the kids. If they're a second grader, or if they're an 8th grader, or if they're a high schooler, we're saying, no, God has a story for you. You're destined for something beautiful. And I think as educators and us, so, I mean, tuck this in your pocket, I think we're meant to go and say, Lord, give us a picture of our kids beyond where they're at right now. And let me treat them in that vision. And still create boundaries, still discipline them, you know. So I think that's the heart of Thrive Tutoring. And seeing the holistic student and seeing them flourish and grow and develop. And I think that's why I'll lock arms with Matt Cartier any day, because I've like, everything I would say, I'm like, oh, he's saying everything I actually would say and train our tutors in. And I'm like, this is awesome. So thank you for letting me kind of be part of this, and I'm excited to get to know you guys. And this school is going to be awesome. So.
This is a good opportunity to highlight a couple things in the packet that just talk about how we are different. But one of them is we do believe we can be the best and brightest as Christians, as learners, and still have fun. Like the two don't have to be exclusive of one another. The other is we really believe in this innovation, this creativity that's put inside of us as human beings. God was super creative and innovative. And as Christians, as we kind of grow these guys up, to think that way is a big part of how this school is going to be as well. The other he mentioned on is high expectations, but high support. I'm a big believer in this, that we put the expectations where it needs to be for kids, but every kid's not exactly the same, and every day for a kid isn't exactly the same. You guys know that. And so assessing, is this a sensory issue? Is this a hunger issue? What's going on? But really supporting them to a place of those high expectations is what the school is about as well. So even though we're loving, even though we're believing, it doesn't mean we're not holding kids to a place of like high expectations. So the schedule as of now looks something like this. So in the morning, we're working hard to get before care in place. Optional morning activities at 7:30. So we've got some people in the house actually that can do fitness with our kids or other activities that get them going, to get everything sharp right in the morning. And then 8:30 is when the school day would start. Right now the vision is to have the kids together for about 15 minutes in the morning, 10 to 15 minutes. I find if I have the same routine every morning about how I'm starting my day, what goals do I have today, who am I going to connect with, I'm checking in with the Lord, and we're getting started, and we're taking the first step together. That's kind of what this is about. So our routine in the morning, receiving God's love, taking a step, moving into the day. And then we get into the core subjects. Lunch, you'll notice, is 45 minutes, and that's on purpose. So they're going to eat right here, over in these tables, or outside, or in the gazebo. And I really hope that lunch can be, for the kids that want to eat for 15 minutes, they can eat for 15 minutes and then go play, or they can get a board game out. But it's more of a time for 45 minutes where they can take it and do what they want. We're definitely going to have teachers out here too, taking turns as far as who does what with them at lunchtime. But again, it's that we're meant to go full capacity from 9 to 12, right? Or 8:30 to 12. Full capacity. We're pushing our brain. But then we're made to like recover. And that's just how humans are. We're either going to recover in healthy ways or we're going to recover in unhealthy ways. There's no option though. We're going to recover. And so I want kids to recover in healthy ways. So that's that built-in recovery for lunch. And then we jump into co-curriculars, extended learning from 12:45 to 3:20. And then again, after school activities we're developing as well. It's about missed anything. Yeah. Nope. So it's just some questions we get a lot. Technology, where do you stand? I'm not afraid of technology. I want to use it where it makes sense. So storing data, it makes sense. It makes sense when it comes to communication. I can communicate with someone in Aurora. I can communicate with someone in Costa Rica. I should probably use technology for all of that. When it really comes to creating things, I think that's our own maker space right there, is in the computer and in technology. So let's use it for what we can use it for. But we're not going to use it to be a substitute for a teacher. So where we got a center over there where they're doing a learning software for reading, that's not the intent of technology, nor the intent for it to be a distraction. So we talk a lot about, is technology something I'm contributing to, or am I just checking out? And we want to train kids to know the difference. Why are you checking out right now? What's going on in your world where you feel like you have to go escape? Is there other things we can do besides just checking out? So we want consumers, or we want producers, not consumers, with technology. But there won't be one-on-one. So especially the young age, we're going to have a cart, and just to kind of get that out. As we get older, we're going to decide if they have laptops. Those decisions haven't been made. Homework. I've gone back and forth on this, quite honestly, on like homework and the role of homework. I do like homework in the sense that it's good for me as a dad to sit down with my kid and to know where they're struggling, or where they're just working on them with math or writing or reading. It gives me a couple things. Empathy for the teacher, to know what it's like to kind of get those concepts into my child's head. But the other is, if I never did homework with them, I really wouldn't know how they're progressing or not progressing in learning, right? So I do think for that level it's important. Homework's actually also important for reinforcing what I would call the things I just have to know. And I really work hard on this with my teachers and kids, is that in life, there's just things you have to do, and you have to do them. And so every unit has those. So we separate them out. Here's the have to learns, have to do's, and here's some fun ways we can actually memorize and learn, and how do you learn? But that stuff's good to do at home too, to reinforce the practice, right? Once we get that down, I talk a lot about play. That's when, if you got all the technical down, that's when in a classroom you can really start to play and be creative. It's like dribbling with your left hand or playing the scales. Once you can do it without looking, then you can really start to get your head up and do some fun stuff. So that's how the school's structured in a lot of ways, is what's the technical, what's the area we can then go play or innovate. And then homework is also a place where we can go deeper, longer. It can be a month-long assignment, a week-long assignment. It can be something where they're actually going to mom and dad and saying, hey, what do you think about this? Give me your perspective. Because we're not the only teacher. You guys are the teachers too. And so getting you involved in a question a week or something like that is important. Health and wellness. So I just think we talk a lot about this and we don't actually do a lot about it. I think schools actually put kids under a lot of stress and pressure unduly, and we don't unwind it a little bit. And so with starting a new school, I'm pretty excited about rethinking through quite a few things as far as what are the foods that we're bringing to school. So we are going to work hard to not bring a lot of sugar onto campus, and then we'll work together on what's a healthy lunch look like. If my kid's having to eat a healthy lunch with your kid, it makes it a lot easier than bringing Reese's candy or something like that. I want to put a lot of research in front of you, because what my wife and I have found is like our gut actually is connected to our brain. And so the healthier we eat, the healthier our emotions are, the more energy we have, the more focus we have, the more clarity. So if we know that to be true, why don't we start training our kids to kind of be that and do that when they're 6, 7, 8, and 9? I wish someone would have done that for me, because it's a lot easier to pick the quesadilla and the tortilla soup like I did yesterday than to eat healthy. And so we want to put research in front of us that our body actually is so connected to our spirit, but we actually a lot of times don't make those hard decisions to connect the two. And so body, mind, and spirit, you can't disconnect them. We're going to focus on our body here. So also that rest I was talking about, self-reflection, gratefulness. And even to show it, we picked active wear as our uniform. So instead of the traditional cotton kind of clothes, we're looking at what are some clothes where, you know, our kids can actually run the stairs. We can get them to go and run around the building. God allowed us to be on these 25 acres that are full of beauty. We can do some sprints back and forth to get back in the classroom, or I'm even tempted to get a treadmill, you know, the ones you can work at with kids, because I know some of your kids need a treadmill to learn on too, not just my kid. But so that's a big part of what we're envisioning for the school too, because I do believe that when our body is healthy, it just opens up a lot of the rest of us. Resources. This is the third area that we're going to focus on. So we're called to build a quality education that will draw more students, requiring us to constantly be thinking about growing and refinement of every aspect of our academy. I pray that we'll remember this group. In fact, we've got to get a picture of this group before we leave on who is here tonight on March 1st, because we do believe God has something for it that's going to be growing. This is 800 homes right here. It's supposed to be 50,000 homes coming out. There's going to be land available, but none of that's going to be possible if we actually don't do a quality education. If we can't take your 4-year-old and turn them into a great reader, if we can't get them to do math in a way where they're of the highest level. And so our first and foremost priority is to give a great education, but we believe in doing so, we're going to be growing. So a part of it too is how do we gather resources? One of those is who are we connected to? So like a lot of Christian schools are connected to ACSI for their accreditation. Advanced Ed would be the secular accreditation, but they go together. CISA is a group that started about 10 years ago that I've been involved with. It's the Council of Educational Standards and Accountability. So there's 30 schools in America that they just put higher standards on what it means to be the very best Christian school in America. And CASE is another one that, in fact, last week I had the privilege of being invited as an emerging leader. I'm 43 and an emerging leader, but it was a real treat to be with 7 or 8 people, and then when they connected us with people that were 70 or 80, they were kind of retiring out of Christian education. And so they're a group that thinks through how do we move education forward. And then we have ISM, Independent School Management. They talk about how we can be sustainable, and we've already started working with them and their materials. OASIS is Innovative Private Schools. I've done a lot of work with them over the years as well. And I wanted to read, we're entering into a relationship with Valor as well. I can find what I need to read here. All right. So there's been some questions about this because it's kind of been a rumor if this is happening or not. And so I just want to kind of go through how they're going to be helping us, how they're not going to be helping us. So congratulations on the launch, Matt, of the Colorado Christian Academy. Your appointment as founding head of a school. This is an exciting time for you and the CCA team. I fondly remember startup years of valor within a framework of tremendous effort and energy around our vision. There was also many times of deep spiritual and personal relationship growth as our founding team leaned on the Lord and on one another for the critical work that we were engaging in. It's an awesome thing for you and the team involved to be part of creating something that currently doesn't exist. May it be that CCA will be a strong beacon of faith and truth that holds tight to God's inspired vision for your school. And may you serve the community that will call your school home in ways that uniquely advance your students in honor of the Lord. You have a lot of heavy lifting to do in the weeks and months ahead to launch the school. Your early years will also require great diligence and effort as you seek to perfect your pursuits. As Valor has reached a point where some on our team now have the opportunity to lift our gaze up from our own work and concern ourselves with the greater Christian school movement. We are excited to support and assist you in meaningful ways. We have reached an understanding with you and your startup team to occupy available and unused space in our business office location. While you are present with us, we will have great opportunity for daily interactions through advice and counsel on Christian school matters. I look forward to also working with your founding board and other individuals on your team, and also making additional personal resources available to you and your team. While we are eager to share our experiences, competencies, and know-how, it will also be critical for CCA to forge their own path, make their own choices, and determine their own steps. We believe through our experiences and know-how, we can help identify and rationalize various best practices for school governance and operations. But every private school is unique and different, and a school's culture and pursuits must be established by the board, leaders, faculty, and staff, and most importantly, the students and parents involved. You have our commitment to care about you and your school, to pray for you and your community, and to bring our best efforts to support and encourage you in this monumental effort to found Colorado Christian Academy. So yours in Christ, Kurt Unruh, who's the CEO at Valor. So the school is in the next few years working to actually support Christian schools around America. And so he's looking at schools at South Denver, but we'll be the first startup school that they're working with, and our offices will be out of Valor West. So as kids come in to do testing and we have parent interviews, that's where I'll be for the next 4 or 5 months. So we're hiring them to consult us, and I get to pester him, my old boss, all I want, which is awesome. So, and then we've already met Matt Holst and Thrive Education. They're going to be here filling in the needs and working alongside. As you can tell, we are pretty similar. I think we said a lot of the same things. So, with resources is money, and so there's 3 levers that a school has to keep it going and to keep it sustainable. One lever is tuition, the other is fees, and the final is fundraising. It's pretty simple. So those are the 3 different things. We have chosen to enter into the market at $12,500 for our tuition, and are really believing to hire the very best teachers we can and put the best programs and services in front of our students. The thing we have to offer you tonight is a first-year family is a legacy tuition for 5 years. If you come for September of this year, the cost won't change. It'll be $12,500 for 5 years. I can tell you now the cost will go up. We've already projected over 5 years to have a school, this size, and to have the services we're doing. We are going to be a high-value school, and so that means the price of tuition is going to go up over the next several years. But we have built into the model a significant number of tuition assistance. So it's my heart that if a family's mission matched and they want to come here and they've interviewed, that we would have the resources to be able to come around them and make it possible. And so that's a big part of our strategy as well, is to have needs-based financial assistance. So I think that's, I just went through that. I forgot one important detail though. We're looking at the first 50 enrolled students. So when we budgeted it out, so that's put a little pressure on making a decision, but we want to have conversations with you about, is this the right school for you or not? We've got some closing remarks from our founding family, and then we're going to do some Q&A, and then we'll do a tour if you want to do it. So I know we're at 6:07, so we're right on time to end at 6:30. So if the founding or host families is the name we came up with, which I love, and so I'm going to pass it back over to Fred.
Thank you, Matt. And it was really 5 families that kind of came together and did the living room thing, the dining room thing, Shannon and I, Matt and Natasha Harris, Stacy and Adam Ostermiller, Tony and Mackenzie Schaefer, and then Jawan's running the cameras back there, and his wife Marilla, the Browns, have just kind of come together and have worked this thing through and pushed it, prayed on it, pushed it again, and just kept going. And we're really blessed to be here with you guys tonight. And I will now turn it over to Shannon, who is going to work through some of the comments that we have from each one of the families.
Hi, everybody. Just again, want to thank everybody for coming tonight and taking the time out to, be part of what has been quite the journey for these families, and actually many of you. I've spent many of time talking in coffee shops and in my living room with a lot of you families too, and we're just so excited that we are finally here. But what we're going to do is just each family is going to talk on kind of one of the things that we think separate this school and what makes us so excited to be part of it. So one thing that we found, spread us out a little more. One thing we found is this real just desire that we found talking to all the families is, okay, we have kids, even in the same family, who just have different strengths and weaknesses, right? So we might have a kid who's really, really good at math, and then a kid who's just not that good at reading, right? But we think there should be a school for all those kids. And it shouldn't be finding one school for every kid that you have in a family to figure out how they can thrive. So I think one thing that we're personally excited about is that these core subjects are gonna be done in a way that allows every child to just to succeed and be who they are. So if they're just struggling a little bit with reading, then great, they can come here. And if they're really, really good at math, great, they can come here too. And it'll just take care of all of those really core critical thinking aspects. So personally, as our families, we've got a first grader who seems very bright. Our pre-K, who knows? We're still yet to see, but we know that both of them will be great here and loved and accepted, and that their confidence will be built. And those core subjects, that are more of that kind of classical model is really just what we're excited about having. Who goes next? You guys. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Shannon. Again, Adam and Stacy Ostermiller, we are thrilled to be here. We are the newest of the host families, and it was nice of all of them to invite us in the last month or two. So we can't take much credit for the work that y'all have done, but thank you again for having us be a part of it. I think the more that we've gotten to know the vision, that the host families have, helped create, and certainly once we knew that Matt Cartier was going to be on board, or we were hoping for the last little bit, became pretty clear that we want to be part of it. And specifically two important reasons that Stacy and I are excited to be part of CCA is, first, the excursions. We think that it represents an opportunity that very few schools, certainly in our community, have. Stacy is actually going to be help running the excursion program here at CCA, so we're excited about that. We think it gives our students a chance to get out into the community, learn, specifically a lot around history and science, which I think will be, really exciting. I know for our kids, and I'm sure for a lot of yours as well. This second reason really is community. So looking across this room, we see some of our best friends, right, in life. And I think if we can, continue to build CCA into what we all believe the school will be, we hope that all of you will follow as well, and we'll continue on to the community that we've been fortunate to have.
So Joanna and Mariella Brown, and what we're so excited about is, and it stems from a relationship that we've had for a long time with Matt, actually both Matts, and but it is really kind of the understanding of how children learn, and the best way to learn, and it really is from a Christ-centered perspective, in which Christ meets us where we're at. He did all the work before we ever got there. And in a lot of ways, that's what a school is too. We're meeting kids where they're at, providing that support that they need, and not having no expectations, but having high expectations, just like the Lord has high expectations of us. But when we fail, He's there to pick us up. And in the same way, that's what school is. School is a place where when you fail, there's there someone to pick you up, someone that has a heart for Christ, that understands that and who lives that on a daily basis, and can really step up to your child to see, okay, this is where they're at. How can we help you to excel? How can we help you to achieve your dreams? How are you going to thrive? And that's one of the reasons why we have these 3 words: inspire, achieve, and thrive. We're inspired because of what Christ has done for us, to go out there and do amazing things. He has empowered us to be a voice for the world. And there is an opportunity here that's been spoken to earlier today, that each of our kids in a community in which we're in have the opportunity to be incredible influencers in the world. And if they have Christ with them, they're they are going to succeed, but the Lord's just going to elevate them to a place where they can do so much more because they are living for Him. And so I believe that in that kind of way, when we study, and if that's the culture that we bring to the classroom, the children will learn, because they understand that learning is a form of worship. They're doing it for the glory of God, but it's not through compulsion, but through love. And because they have a desire to do so, and they see that in their teachers, and they see that in the culture of the school.
One thing that we connected with Matt early on a few years ago was the idea of teaching and reaching the whole child. It's something that just really speaks to me and Tony, and some of you may know we have a 5th grader who's approaching those preteen years, and this year already has been a little tough. And just to have the support with the school and with our community, and how to speak to her and encourage her in those ways, along with her academics, is something that I'm really looking forward to growing in. And also the physical aspect of movement and exercise and getting out of your chair and kind of getting away from your test or your work. Just to have those breaks throughout the day is something that I think is going to make a big difference, especially for our 7-year-old who likes to be active and running around. So those are a few things that really have kind of struck a chord with us, and we're looking forward to seeing that implemented.
So I want to address one thing that's been on my heart, is how our schools governed, how our Christian schools governed, by who are they governed by what their beliefs and vision are. And the sad fact behind it is business, right? It's a business. It needs money to grow. But what me and Mackenzie have looked for, at least in South Denver here, we cannot find in a school that has a governing board that cares as much about the school and not about the dollar amounts. And what you'll find with these host families here, and what you'll find with the presentation that Matt just said, there is no requirement to give money. There's no requirement to be a donor. Donors don't get any preferential treatment over anybody else who's coming on board. And that is very, very something important that I feel that everybody needs to know here, that yes, we need money. One thing, I'm not sure, Matt, if you had mentioned it, but we had a kind of a prayer about we needed some seed money to come to this group. It was about, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, a month ago? And the dollar amount was $1.2 million. And all of us host families said, what the heck, how are we going to do that? Within 4 days, we had $1.2 million, just 30,000 shy of $1.2 million seed money, right? That is another attributed account to God. Because we're all thinking, how are we going to do that? We don't have $1.2 million to give, but God knows where that's coming from. And so when I look at that, and I look at the governance, and I look at the responsibilities put on all of our shoulders, this group up here is ready to take that on. And I'm not sure there's another school out there that has that kind of structure, so I wanted to say that. And then one more thing I wanted to say, schools are really good about teaching children how they can be good at what they're good at, but they're not good at teaching them what they're not good at. So if you're not good at it, it's go find a tutor. Go find somebody else. Well, wait a second here. You're trying to teach everybody that you're perfect? That is not, there's no way that God made us to be perfect at everything. And that's how our schools are set up, is if you're perfect, great. And so all of our young kids think, well, you have to be perfect. And perfection is not the goal. That is not the goal in this group. We want to be prepared to take on life and life's challenges and life's hardships and be able to say, yeah, I can deal with this. I'm trained. I know God's given me a mind and I can work through this. So I think those are a couple important pieces for me.
Hi, Matt and Natasha Harris. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. Tony mentioned this, but in a very short time frame, we raised significant funds, and it's really exciting to see. You know, you have the conversation, this is what we want to do, but are we financially outfitted to be able to do it? And just seeing that initial momentum was really encouraging. We want to get to know you. We want to build a community with you. Please look at your packet. There is a list in there of upcoming events, a family fun run event. You know, want our kids to get to know each other, want to know your family. There's also a fundraising event where, you know, we hope that you'll prayerfully consider some sponsorship opportunities, maybe some things for the classroom, maybe helping with tuition assistance for kids that, you know, really want to be here, but it's hard on their families to come. That being said, the legacy tuition that Matt mentioned, it is a very important thing to revisit, and I want to, you know, revisit it with you all. It's a 5-year planning mechanism for your family. You know, we've vacillated a lot about what that time frame looks like. 5 years is significant. It's a significant period of time to stagnate tuition costs for your family. We're encouraging that 5-year mark because you're taking this step of faith with us all. And it will get more expensive. Cost of living in Denver, as you all are experiencing, is going up, so it will get more expensive. And then just finally too, we're gonna have questions following this, and if you would like to tour the building, we can absolutely help with that. Each of us host families are here alongside the Cartiers because we really felt moved to become more involved. And if any of you feel that same encouragement and you want to walk alongside us, we would love to have you on board with us. So please feel free to approach the host family or Matt or Krista if you feel moved in that manner. I'm going to turn it over to Matt for questions.
Oh, you were doing all.
I'm ready to pass.
Matt's first question to me was whether I would host the boot camp every morning at 7:30, and my answer was no.
I'm going to ask 4 more times. So this is my 21st year in education. I've never seen what I just experienced from this group. We were so hesitant to move back in and to really kind of the school world for a while, and we did really take a break. And but this group didn't. I mean, they really, I just kept getting updates, and I was like, "Hey, wow, that's amazing." And then I hired a coach actually to like make a decision on the next transition for me in life, and she's not high in faith, but she actually said to me, "It sounds like God's moving ahead, and you're not jumping on board. You know, you better hurry up." So kudos to this group and their faith, their dedication, and just all the work they put together. And it's really, yeah, give them a big hand. And out of their wisdom too, they've actually, with the governance, they've put together a committee. It's not going to be the group that starts the committee has agreed to, some of them will stay on, but some of them move off, and we're going to bring in other people. And so they're committed to making the most healthy school possible and not just making it convenient for them. So another thing I've been super attracted to about who they are. Let's open it up to some questions. If you would like to get